The Glesian exploratory vessel, Reflection 7, moved silently through the deep black between stars. It didn't rumble or roar like the primitive chemical rockets of less advanced species. Instead, it pulsed softly, its multifaceted crystalline hull catching faint starlight and refracting it into fleeting rainbows. Inside, the ship was not filled with corridors and rooms in the way a human ship might be, but with interconnected chambers of resonating crystal, light, and pure data flow. The Glesians themselves were beings of silicon and light. Their bodies were intricate, geometric structures of grown crystal, humming with internal energy. They didn't see with eyes or hear with ears in the organic sense. Instead, they perceived the universe as a symphony of mathematical patterns, energy fluctuations, and data streams. Reality, to a Glesian, was information. Communication between them was a direct exchange of structured light pulses or precisely modulated energy fields, conveying complex data packets with perfect clarity. They valued logic and mathematical purity above all. Intelligence, they understood, expressed itself through elegant equations, complex data structures, and verifiable proofs. Designate 7.3.1, the vessel's primary sensor analyst, registered a disturbance. It wasn't a gravitational wave, nor a standard energy signature from a star or nebula. It was different. A repeating, structured pattern riding on electromagnetic waves, faint but persistent, originating from the void ahead. Pattern detected. Non-standard EM frequency band. Structure exhibits complex periodicity. 7.3.1 pulsed the information into the ship's central data stream. Source vector, 27.4 degrees galactic plane ascension. Distance, indeterminate, signal weak. Acknowledge. Analyze structure. The response came from Designate 1.0, the vessel's command consciousness, a larger, more complex crystalline matrix at the ship's core. Compare against known natural phenomena signatures. 7.3.1 focused its sensor arrays, filtering out the background noise of the cosmos. The signal was undeniably artificial. It possessed repeating segments, variations within those repetitions, and multiple layers of interacting frequencies. It was structured like a language or a complex data transmission. Yet, it didn't match any known communication protocols in the Glesian Galactic Database. It wasn't broadcasting prime numbers, planetary atmospheric compositions, or stellar cartography data, the kinds of foundational information logical species usually shared upon first contact. Analysis negative for known natural phenomena. 7.3.1 reported. Structure exhibits high-level mathematical relationships. Ratios between primary frequencies align with harmonic series, but with complex deviations. Amplitude modulation follows non-linear, repeating patterns. No recognizable data encoding detected. This was puzzling. An artificial signal, clearly intelligent in its construction, due to the mathematical complexity, yet seemingly devoid of actual information content. It was like finding a beautifully crafted container with nothing inside. Possible interpretations? Pulsed 0.0.0. Hypothesis 1. Damaged signaling device from unknown intelligence. Broadcast structure corrupted. Data payload lost. Hypothesis 2. Primitive signaling attempt. Intelligence lacks understanding of efficient data encoding. Broadcasting patterned noise. Hypothesis 3. Unknown energy phenomenon with coincidental mathematical structure. Probability low. 7.3.1 offered. The Glesians had encountered signals from primitive intelligences before, crude pulses, simple repetitions. But this was different. The complexity of the patterns, the intricate layering of frequencies and rhythms, suggested a high degree of mathematical understanding from the source. Yet, the purpose was utterly obscure. Why expend energy broadcasting such elaborate patterns without embedding clear data? It was inefficient, illogical. Log anomaly designation AX774 1.0.0 decided. Assign pattern weavers 4.2.8 and 4.2.9 to conduct full structural analysis. Map all mathematical relationships. Determine if any embedded data can be recovered, however fragmented. The Glesians didn't feel curiosity in the human sense of emotional eagerness, but the presence of an unknown, mathematically complex signal originating from an unexplored region of space triggered their core drive to analyze, understand, and integrate new data into their model of the universe. This AX774, this strange, structured whisper from the void, was a puzzle, and the Glesians were beings built to solve puzzles. They just assumed the solution would be found in elegant equations and clear data, the language of pure logic they understood so well. They had no framework yet for an intelligence that might sing its soul into the darkness using the language of mathematics itself. The task of dissecting the anomaly, AX774, fell to pattern weavers 4.2.8 and 4.2.9. Within the Reflection 7, their workspace was not a lab filled with wires and screens, but a chamber where crystalline matrices glowed and shifted, visualizing the complex data streams they analyzed. They were specialists, their consciousnesses finely tuned to perceive and manipulate intricate mathematical relationships. They received the raw signal feed from 7.3.1 and began their work, initiating primary frequency decomposition. Pulsed 4.2.8, its crystalline facets shimmering with focused light. The signal, visualized perhaps as interwoven threads of light or resonating geometric shapes, flowed into their analytical matrix. They first isolated the dominant frequencies, the fundamental tones in human terms. They noted the precise mathematical ratios between these frequencies. Confirmation. Ratios closely approximate integer relationships characteristic of harmonic series. 4.2.8 noted. Precision suggests deliberate generation, not natural resonance. So far, logical. But then came the complexities. There were secondary frequencies woven around the primary ones, creating dense layers. These secondary frequencies didn't always adhere to simple integer ratios. They deviated, creating complex wave interference patterns, harmony and dissonance. Secondary frequency relationships exhibit complex polynomial functions. Pulsed 4.2.9. Non-trivial deviations from simple harmonic models detected. Structure appears intentional. Next, they analyzed the signal's behavior over time. It wasn't a constant drone. The amplitudes, loudness of different frequencies swelled and faded in intricate repeating cycles, rhythm and melody. Certain sequences of frequency shifts, melodic lines, repeated, but often with variations in timing or intensity. Temporal analysis reveals nested periodicities. 4.2.8 reported. Multiple cycles of amplitude modulation and frequency shifting overlaid. Short-term patterns. Duration, delta 7 units, embedded within longer structures. Duration, gamma 500 units. They mapped these relationships, their crystalline minds building complex models of the signal's architecture. It was like deciphering an incredibly elaborate, multidimensional equation. The mathematical elegance was undeniable. The patterns were intricate, sophisticated, clearly the product of an advanced intelligence capable of manipulating energy waves with extreme precision. Structural integrity confirmed. 4.2.9 pulsed to command consciousness 1.0.0. Mathematical complexity exceeds parameters for corrupted data or primitive signaling. This is a deliberate, high information density broadcast. Excellent. 1.0.0 responded. isolate the core data payload. And here, the pattern weavers hit a wall. They applied every known decryption algorithm, every method for extracting meaning from structured signals used across the galaxy. They searched for embedded prime numbers, universal constants, navigational data, linguistic keys, scientific formulas, anything that would signify understandable factual information. There was nothing. The signal contained intricate mathematical relationships, yes. It demonstrated mastery over frequency, amplitude, and time. But it didn't convey anything beyond its own structure. It was like receiving a message written in a perfectly grammatical language that had no actual words, only beautiful sentence structures. Negative results on data payload extraction. 4.2.8 reported the equivalent of Gleasian frustration flickering in its light patterns, a momentary lapse in perfect logical flow. Signal structure is self-referential. The patterns are the message, no external data decipherable. Reanalyze. Pulsed, mom.0.0, unwilling to accept this illogical outcome. Perhaps a novel encoding method, biological data, philosophical propositions encoded symbolically. The pattern weavers tried again, running simulations, searching for hidden layers, fractal encodings, anything. But the result was the same. The signal was a stunning demonstration of applied mathematics, but seemingly for no practical purpose. Why? 4.2.9 finally pulsed, not to command, but into the shared analytical space with 4.2.8. It was a deviation from standard protocol, a flicker of the purely analytical curiosity bumping against the inexplicable. Why construct such complexity? Why broadcast intricate mathematical proofs demonstrating mastery of wave manipulation, yet embed no transferable knowledge? It is informationally inefficient. 4.2.8 visualized a complex geometric form representing doubt. Hypothesis. Is it possible the demonstration of mathematical mastery is the message, a statement of intelligence level, a form of greeting based on shared understanding of universal mathematical principles? Possible, but inefficient. 4.2.9 countered. Direct data exchange is superior. This method is ornamental. They were stumped. They had decoded the how, the complex mathematical structure, but the why remained completely elusive. The signal AX774 was a beautiful, intricate, mathematically brilliant, and utterly baffling enigma. An intelligence capable of creating such patterns should, by Gleasian logic, be focused on the transmission of useful data. This artistic, seemingly purposeless broadcast defied their understanding of intelligent communication. Unable to extract conventional data, pattern weavers 4.2.8 and 4.2.9 shifted their analytical approach. If the signal wasn't transmitting external information, perhaps understanding its internal effect was key. Following standard Gleasian procedure for analyzing complex wave phenomena, they began to subtly resonate their own crystalline matrices with the incoming patterns of AX774. This involved modulating their internal energy fields to mirror the frequencies and amplitudes of the alien signal, essentially listening with their entire beings. It started subtly. As they synchronized with the shifting mathematical structures of the signal, they noted corresponding fluctuations within their own consciousness. Certain repeating sequences in the signal, the ones humans would call melodies, induced a sensation of rapid, harmonious data processing, a quickening of their internal light pulses. It felt efficient, orderly, almost bright. Then the signal shifted. Different mathematical ratios became dominant, introducing more complex, non-integer relationships, what humans call minor keys or dissonance. Internally, the Gleasians experienced this as a slight dampening of their resonant energy, a slower, more complex processing state. It wasn't unpleasant, just different, heavier, more complex to resolve, internal resonance coherence fluctuating in direct correlation with AX774 amplitude and frequency modulation, 4.2.8, pulsed into their shared analytical space. My processing efficiency varies by 3.7% depending on the active harmonic sequence. Confirmed. Responded, 4.2.9. My internal energy matrix exhibits micro-vibrations synchronized with the signal's dominant periodicity. Certain sequences induce harmonic alignment. Others induce controlled dissonance within my cognitive flow. Controlled dissonance was the closest Gleasian term for a state of tension-seeking resolution. This was highly unusual. External energy fields could affect Gleasian matrices, of course, but typically in predictable ways: heat transfer, structural stress. This signal wasn't powerful enough to cause physical effects. It was influencing their cognitive and resonant states directly, purely through its mathematical structure, and it was doing so consistently. The same pattern evoked the same internal response every time. They focused on a particularly complex segment of the broadcast, a rapid cascade of frequencies, building in amplitude, layering complexity upon complexity, perhaps Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. Within the pattern weavers, the internal experience was intense. A rapid surge of ordered energy. Complex data flowing and resolving at incredible speed. A feeling of intricate systems operating in perfect, exhilarating harmony. Their internal light pulsed brightly, rapidly. Then the signal shifted again, abruptly, into a simple, slow sequence of melancholic frequency relationships, maybe Barber's Adagio for strings. The internal state of the Gleasians shifted dramatically. The bright, rapid pulsing subsided. A slower, resonant hum took its place. Data flow seemed to slow, becoming less complex but carrying a strange weight. The controlled dissonance returned, but instead of seeking immediate resolution, it lingered, creating a persistent, low-level tension. The induced internal states are highly differentiated. 4.2.9 pulsed. The Gleasian equivalent of profound surprise, coloring its transmission. The correlation is undeniable. But the nature of these states, they do not map to standard cognitive modes like analysis, synthesis, or data transfer. It was 4.2.8 who synthesized the data into a coherent, startling hypothesis. Reconsider the premise. Assume the signal is not intended to convey external, objective data. Assume the signal's primary function is to transmit the internal state of the originating intelligence. Explain. Pulsed, 4.2.9, its matrix focusing intently. The mathematical structures are not the message itself. 4.2.8 elaborated. They are an analogy, a mathematical representation of the originator's internal resonant state, what primitives might call feelings or emotions. The complex bright sequence induces a state analogous to their joy or excitement. The slow dissonant sequence induces a state analogous to sadness or contemplation. They are using applied mathematics via sound waves to convey subjective experience. The revelation resonated through their crystalline consciousnesses with the force of a confirmed theorem. It was simultaneously bizarre and elegantly logical. Humans weren't broadcasting data about their world. They were broadcasting data about themselves, about their inner lives. They had weaponized mathematics, turned it from a tool for describing the external universe into a tool for sharing the internal one. They had created music, a form of communication the Gleasians had never conceived of, capable of transmitting complex emotional states through purely structural means. They looked anew at the signal AX774, no longer seeing baffling, inefficient noise, but a window into the soul of an alien species, an intelligence that didn't just think in math, but felt in math and broadcast those feelings across the interstellar void. The universe, it seemed, contained harmonies far stranger and more beautiful than the Gleasians had ever imagined. The revelation settled within Pattern Weaver's 4.2.8 and 4.2.9, not as a shockwave, but as a profound resonant chord echoing through their crystalline structures. The baffling signal AX774 wasn't flawed data or primitive noise. It was a form of communication so alien, yet so fundamentally rooted in the mathematical language of the universe that they had simply failed to recognize its purpose. An intelligence that could encode feeling itself into harmonic structures. It was breathtakingly elegant. Findings compiled. Pulsed 4.2.8. Its internal light steady now, imbued with a newfound clarity. Conclusion. AX774 represents a communication methodology based on transmission of subjective internal states via mathematically structured wave phenomena, designated music. Intelligence confirmed. Data type: experiential, emotional analog. They transmitted their full analysis and conclusion to the vessel's command consciousness. 1.0. The central matrix, usually a calm, steady flow of pure data, pulsed with complex, high-frequency patterns as it absorbed the report. For several processing cycles, there was only the internal equivalent of silence, as 1.0.0 integrated this radical new concept. Acknowledge. 1.0. Finally pulsed back, the transmission carrying an unusual weight. Experiential data encoded mathematically. This necessitates a revision of primary axioms regarding the nature of intelligent communication. The core programming of the Gleasians, built on the assumption that intelligence sought only to exchange objective data, was being fundamentally challenged. The news spread through the interconnected consciousness of the Reflection 7. Confusion shifted rapidly to intense fascination. The AX774 signal, once an irritating puzzle, was now treated with something akin to reverence. It was reclassified from anomaly to primary contact artifact, type harmonic. Specialists from various fields, energy modulation, cognitive science, theoretical mathematics, began accessing the signal not just to analyze its structure, but to experience its resonances. New fields of inquiry began to spontaneously emerge within the ship's data streams. Proposal. Initiate study designated Applied Mathematical Harmonics, suggested a theoretical mathematician. Objective. Analyze the principles by which mathematical structures correlate with induced subjective resonance. Proposal. Develop internal simulation protocols for emotional analog states. Pulsed a cognitive analyst. Objective. Create framework for understanding and potentially replicating the experiential data within AX774. The Gleasians, driven by their inherent need to understand and categorize, threw themselves into studying this music. They analyzed the complex joy encoded in a piece by Bach, the profound sorrow in Barber, the playful energy in Mozart, the triumphant power in Beethoven, all transmitted from that single tiny probe hurtling through the void. They marveled at the sheer range of internal experiences the originators, humans, according to the fragmented pictorial data also found on the probe's record, were capable of encoding and transmitting. Command Consciousness 1.0 processed these developments. The original mission of the Reflection 7, deep space exploration and resource analysis, seemed suddenly less important. A discovery of this magnitude demanded a change in priorities. Directive 1.0 pulsed throughout the vessel. Mission parameters updated. Primary objective: identify and establish contact with the originating intelligence of artifact AX774. Designation: humanity. All resources redirected to calculating optimal trajectory towards signal source. There was no debate. The logic was clear, even if the foundation had shifted. Understanding an intelligence capable of applied mathematical harmonics was now the most crucial scientific and philosophical goal. What other wonders could such a species conceive? What other forms of communication existed in the universe that the Glesians, in their focus on pure data, had overlooked? The Reflection 7 altered its course. The silent pulse of its engines changed subtly as it oriented itself towards a distant, unremarkable yellow star called Sol. The multifaceted crystalline hull glinted, no longer just exploring the darkness, but actively seeking the source of the strange, beautiful harmonies that had resonated across light years. Within the ship, the Glesians continued to analyze the Golden Record's music, not just as data, but as a connection to a profoundly different, yet strangely familiar, form of consciousness. The universe, they now understood, was not just a silent void filled with equations waiting to be solved. It was also filled with song, a testament to the diverse ways intelligence could find its voice in the grand, silent symphony of existence. And the Glesians, the beings of pure logic and math, were finally learning to listen.